Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA Edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, getting ready to go over this nice DraftKings main slate. There was an early slate earlier today as well. We hand out picks for that, and we will be handing out night picks. If you're interested in that, you can catch those on our Patreon. If you like to play FanDuel instead, you can also catch those main core picks on our Patreon too. The DraftKings main slate picks are free, as is our Discord. You can check out both if you head to the Discord right now. Nice, engaging, growing community. So if you want some extra advice, you want people to check out your lineups, and you want updated core picks for the DraftKings main slate, that is the place to be. If anything I say here helps you out, please give this video a like and also consider subscribing to the channel. Both those things help us out quite a bit. All right, let's get into it. Usually we go position by position, but I'm just doing it myself today. So I'm actually going to go team by team real quick and just highlight my favorite plays per team. Starting with the Hawks here, they get a really nice spot against the Wizards, a nice 227.5 total. That or 237.5 total. So that is a very inviting DFS environment for sure. Trae Young, it is second leg of a back-to-back set, so Trae Young could be a bit fatigued for sure. He's been very up and down all year, but this is just a smash spot against the Wizards. So Trae looks good. If you want to pay for him at 9.6K, he is carrying ownership because of the matchup and because of his ceiling. So I don't know if I really want to meet him at 25%, but I do like the spot for sure. I'd like it a little bit better for Onyeka Okongwu. The projection is not through the roof, but 6.5K against the Wizards. They give up a lot of rebounding and interior scoring production. Plus, he can swat a lot of shots. So, Clint Capella still remains out. So, Okongwu could feast here. So, I like him quite a bit at 6.5K. The only issue is going to be, do we really want to go in the mid-range at center today with Jokic up top and values down low? So, that aside, he looks really good, and he's carrying ownership because of it. Dyson Daniels is a steals and blocks, fiend, so he can do a lot of damage. He's also carrying ownership because, again, the Wizards are a dream spot. Don't mind him at 7.1K. I feel like Nyeka is a bigger priority, and obviously Trae just has a monster ceiling. Dyson has been good, though. Last couple of games, over 40 fantasy points, actually 3 in a row. So he's definitely been feeling it, and the matchup is really good. So if you land on Dyson, I don't have an issue. Not really the kind of guy I want to play into ownership just because he doesn't always have a massive ceiling. So if he's not falling into those steals and blocks and not hitting a ton of shots, then he could certainly fail at that price tag. As far as value goes, I think Reza Share and Vic Krejci are okay, just because the matchup is really good, but not really eager to get to anybody else. Karis LeVert is going to potentially eat into them too, and we all know how we feel about Karis LeVert based off his last game when he shot 0 for 8. So not super eager to do that. For the most part, it is Trae, Onyeka, and Daniels, and for me, it is in that order. But actually, in terms of price per, point per dollar and price, I think Onyeka is probably my favorite Hawk tonight. Jordan Poole, again, looks great. Dropped a 60 burger yesterday. Did not really expect that. I did not make him, we didn't make him a core play because, first of all, only 8-man rotation there, given all the injuries and everything. That does make you want to look at guys anytime you see that. If there's if the team is so shorthanded that basically everybody has to play, for sure, you do want to consider him. But that game had a 19-point spread. So if it gets to the point where A, he could have been struggling, and B, the game could blow out, then all of a sudden this guy who looks amazing just doesn't look so amazing. Tonight, it's a little bit different, though. Not a 19-point spread, and the Hawks are an amazing matchup where the Cavs really are not, and Poole projects just really, really well. So I love Poole tonight. Do not mind playing into ownership with him on this spot at all. 7.1K, his price is not moved enough. Don't think he's going to get 60 fantasy points again, but he's going to have monster usage in a really good spot. Bilal Coulibaly also looks really good. Not as good, but he is 1.4K cheaper, so he's solid. Chris Middleton should be there, 25 to 30 minutes. Don't really know what to expect from him, but at 5.5K, I think he's in play. Rashawn Holmes is 1.2K more expensive than he was yesterday. So yesterday, if it wasn't a 19-point spread against the Cavs, Rashawn Holmes would have been a smash. The other issue, though, he also had a questionable tag all day because he was sick. So never fun to play a guy who might be struggling with some virus where he's weak and lethargic, right? So I wasn't really into him that much. He did end up hitting, but now that he's 1.2K more expensive, I don't think he's a must just because that price point, but certainly still in play because the Hawks are a friendly matchup for DFS purposes. Brogdon is questionable. So Brogdon's status is going to be pretty key for the Wizards because as things stand, Keyshawn George is also on the injury report. And they're still without some key guys, namely Alexander Sarr. Chris Middleton's out for this game, by the way, so ignore the Chris Middleton comments. But so they're going to be super shorthanded. Right now, it looks like they have 9 guys if Keyshawn George is in, and they could, again, be with just 8 guys. And if that's the case, We can go right back to Washington here. Just keep an eye on the situation as far as like who actually could be in this game. If they're extremely shorthanded in a game with the Hawks, I like Wizards across the board quite a bit. Keyshawn George at 4.3, Bob Carrington at 4.5. Those guys would be two of the first priorities as far as a value frame of mind. And then Rashawn again at 4.7 is totally fine. But Poole among all the Wizards looks really, really good. San Antonio goes to Orlando to play the Magic. Not really the spot I want to pay for Wemby in. Obviously, it's the second leg of a back-to-back set, so Wemby very well could rest in this game. Wouldn't shock me one bit. De'Aaron Fox would look fine at 8.5K, and of course, you can still play Wemby at 11.1K with almost a 50-point fantasy projection, especially since nobody else is going to. So, anytime you can get a guy with 80-point fantasy upside and a projection pushing 50. You have to feel reasonably good about it if nobody else is going to be on him. I just don't really like to play guys against the Magic in general. So if everybody's there, the Spurs don't look very, very appealing. If we see like CP3 or Wemby or anybody rest, then we can start looking at the Spurs a little bit more. And if in the event that did happen, maybe Keldon Johnson off the bench at 4.4 or Stephon Castle at 5.4, he would be thrust in the starting lineup possibly. Then we can look at those guys. But honestly, for the most part, it's maybe an unknown Wemby, but that's about it. On the other side, Orlando, you have Banchero and Wagner. That's kind of all that's exciting here for the most part. I guess the wings, there could be options there with Suggs. I believe Suggs is still out. Let me just double check. Suggs is doubtful. So as long as he still doesn't play, I think Cole Anthony at 5.5K with his price coming down, he is certainly interesting. Nice projection for him. No ownership. I don't mind him at all. Anthony Black at 4.1K, not the worst try, but not one I feel amazing about. For the most part, I'm not really into the Magic here. Wagner and Banchero are good prices, decent projections, but I don't feel like they're necessarily priorities because the Spurs defense is not as bad as it once was. Moving on here, we got the Bulls and the Warriors. Warriors in at the United Center facing Chicago. Obviously, we know the Chicago Bulls are a really good matchup. They play fast. They don't play defense. So Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler both are fine plays. Nice prices, and we know they do have ceilings. Unknown as to how much Jimmy will play, how well he will play. Obviously, it's just a natural revenge game for him against one of his former teams. He's going to be out to prove something after being traded away from Miami. So I think Jimmy's in play. Like, you can certainly play him, but the projection doesn't blow me away. And just debuts are very miss. Like, you have a De'Aaron Fox debut, and then you have like a Kyle Kuzma debut. You just don't know what you're going to get. So Jimmy is viable. I'll keep him in my player pool, assuming we we don't hear there's a limit of any kind, but just not a guy I'm thinking like I have to absolutely play. Same with Steph. Now that there's a high usage guy potentially there, I think Steph is just a little bit less exciting. Certainly he's been good lately. I mean, he had 56 fantasy points against the Lakers, 47 against Utah. So when there's a good matchup in front of him, Curry actually does look pretty appealing, and the Bulls are exactly that. So I don't mind Curry. I just think on this slate, he's not a clear priority. The Warriors are basically just center minutes between Kevon Looney and Quinton Post. I mean, they're okay punts down low if you want to go there. The Bulls give up a lot of production inside the centers. Who's going to get most of the minutes? I don't know. So it's tough to really feel amazing about either of them, but they are okay values if you're looking for somebody cheap to complete your lineups. But Jimsky and Buddy Hield, I think they're okay plays in this matchup. Positive matchup. They're not going to break the bank. 4.8K, 5K. They're fine, but not major priorities by any means. Full side, it's not that good of a matchup. The Warriors might play slower with Jimmy in town, and in general, they've been a capable defensive team. So I'm not like super excited to play Bulls guys here, but obviously Levine is gone, and with him, with his usage, I think value with somebody like Matas Buzelis, like he could be okay, assuming he is locked into big minutes again. But we have Lonzo Ball back for this game, so they're kind of like at full strength as far as like who they've been lately, and they also get they could be getting a couple of other bodies back. From the trade situations they had. So if that happens, they're going to be like, fully ready to go, and they're just not going to look super, super appealing. I think Kobe and Giddey are okay tourney plays, but if they're carrying ownership, I'm not going to be that interested. OKC and Memphis could be a really fun game. 242.5 total. Obviously, OKC is very good defensively. They have Chet back. It will be interesting to learn if he's actually going to play because they did play last night. But, he's going to be limited even if he is out there. So I think we can still look at Isaiah Hartenstein. We can still try Jalen Williams. They're going to have cap ceilings depending on how much usage Chet, soaks up. But this matchup sets up extremely well for SGA. It's just a really, really fast-paced environment. It is on the road. Memphis is capable of playing good defense at times. So he's not like a clear cut, like the guy we have to play on this slate. But if SGA is going to be completely overlooked at 10.9K, I think he's an interesting tourney play. Hartenstein, good price. Just Chet being back kind of curbs his upside. And I just don't feel like any of the other guys are complete standouts. Oh, Chet actually is out. So did not have that listed here. Okay, so he's actually out. So Hartenstein looks awesome. Now that I know that. Hartenstein is 7K flat against the Grizz with no Chet. That sounds good. And Jalen also looks pretty darn good too. So OKC is looking like an interesting team to target. I think, though, right now, I would be mostly looking at Jalen and Hartenstein if I am going to go after the Thunder, just because SGA is almost 11K here. On the other side, John Morant still limited. Desmond Bane, I think Desmond Bane is questionable because he missed the last game. Yep, he's questionable. So keep an eye on that. If he is out, we'll get a little bit of a usage boost for Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr. is not in here, or he's down here for some reason, but he should be in. So we'll see. He did have a face injury in his last game. Not his last game, but recently. So just make sure he's in. Don't see why he wouldn't be. If he's in and Bane is out, then JJJ would look really good at 8.3K. Matchup notwithstanding. Obviously, the matchup is not great. It's more about a game has a really high total, and Memphis pushes the pace. So if we can get into a shootout here, Morant is viable, and then guys like Bane or JJJ would be interesting too. But I'd really, for the most part, with the Grizz, I'd be either going with value with somebody like Edie, or I'd be looking at JJJ if Bane is out. All right, Portland and Minnesota. In Minnesota, DeAndre Ayton does not project great against Rudy Gobert. It's not really a good spot across the board. I'm not super into Blazers here. Nobody stands out. They should be at full strength. Denny Avdia is the one guy to monitor. He is questionable, and Scoot Henderson off the bench is questionable as well. So if Denny is out, we can feel a lot better about Jeremy Grant at 5.6K. I think he's a value that I wouldn't mind taking a crack at. And then Anthony Simons would get more usage too. So those are the two guys I'd really look at. I feel like Kamara's price at 6.4K is a bit rich. And then Shadon Sharp at 6.1 is probably the other guy I'd look at if Scoot is also out. If two of those guys are out, then we can get a little bit more interested in the Blazers. But as things stand, they're on the road. Minnesota's a good defensive team. Nobody projects that well. I would definitely need one or both those guys to miss to get super into Blazers. On the other side, I mean, Blazers have been really good, no doubt about it, but Minnesota looks awesome here. Anthony Edwards, assuming he plays, not the best projection, but we know he has a massive ceiling, and he's been crushing nightly. He is questionable to play due to hip soreness, but he's been playing monster minutes. He's had 60-plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. I mean, it's not that bad of a matchup. Portland's been playing well, but I think it's certainly one that he can overcome and have a good game in. Julius Randle is still out. He's been out for a while, and it's opened up a ton of usage for these guys, specifically for Naz Reid. 6.7K for Naz Reid feels expensive, but it's not expensive enough. I love Naz again. I think Taylor already listed him as a core play. If he didn't, I'll just tell you, I would think he's a core play. He's awesome. I'm going to want him in my lineups for sure. I prefer him over Rudy, who's $100 more and projects way worse. And I prefer him over Jaden McDaniels. And then if we have Edwards out, I mean, forget about it. Naz would just be amazing here. I think that's probably it for them. I mean, McDaniels is just too expensive now. If Edwards is out, though, we can look at somebody like Nah at 4.4K, and perhaps Rob Dillingham would get a little bit extra run as well. All right, moving on to second last game of the night, Boston, New York. This one does have a 32.5 total. So pretty nice game environment if it stays close. You really never know with Boston. I swear every time we think Boston's going to blow somebody out, the game is like double overtime. And then if they're in a game like this, they're going to beat the Knicks by 30. It's just the way it goes. But as things stand, Tatum looks good up top. He's not going to be very owned. He's not even 10K, and he projects pretty decently. And the Knicks are not the scary matchup they used to be. So I think Tatum is an interesting tournament play. He has not really been hitting regularly on the year. I mean, this game log, I mean, you don't want to be a game log watcher, but at the same time, like, he'll get you the 66 and maybe a 50 here and there, but he has not been very good for a lot of the year. He's had his spike games, but he's had a lot of games where you are definitely sorry you played him. So good tourney play, but I think for the most part, I don't really want Tatum here. I think Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, Derek White, those are the guys I'd really be looking at with Boston. And one guy in particular with Drew Holiday out, Peyton Pritchard at 5.5K, he stands out. I think him and Derek White are probably the two guys that I would feel, the best about. And then also you're going to get a little bit more run for somebody like Al Horford, who's only 3.6K. So I think just based off of his price and the fact that he's historically a pretty good permanent guy, I think he's okay as well. But I think that my favorite play from Boston right now is Peyton Pritchard. All right, over to New York we go. We got some injuries to monitor for the Knicks for sure. We have Cat Towns. He is probable, so he should be in. But as we know with like Giannis the other night, you just never know. So definitely keep an eye on that. Josh Hart also probable. And OG Anunoby is doubtful. So OG is probably not going to play here. And then Cat and Hart should be in, but you just never know. So want to keep an eye on that. With OG out, Precious Achiuwa looks like an okay play at 5.7K, and Miles McBride could get a few more minutes off the bench at 3.7. If they flip it there and Miles McBride starts at 3.7, I would love him as a value at that price. As they stand, obviously Boston is not a friendly matchup, but Cat looks great. Like unowned Cat in a bad spot, like that's why his ownership is going to be low. But the projection, the price, and the ceiling all look really, really good. So I really have no issue getting into Cat as long as he's in. Struggled definitely quite a bit, only 25 fantasy points last time he faced Boston, but I know he's capable of overcoming that, so I don't mind hitting the over when it comes to the projected ownership. Brunson at 8.6 projects pretty well here. No Drew to go up against. He will have to face Derek White, I'm assuming, but I mean, if Drew's out, the Boston defense is not going to be quite as nasty. So I think he's a good play at that price point. Prefer Cat, though, if I'm going to pay up for a Nick. Josh Hart is in play if he's in, but his projection does not wow me whatsoever. So pretty much Cat or Brunson for me on this slate, with a hard lean to Cat for me. All right, last game of the night, we have Jokic up top for Denver. He looks awesome. Best projection of the slate, and he's not really that owned right now. Basically, anytime the ownership is sub 10% for Jokic, we can just assume, depending on the contest, it's probably going to actually come in around 30. So that's probably what you can expect. It's probably not going to be a slate where Jokic is going to be like 60% owned, but he's probably going to be about 25 to 30%, which I think is still a massive edge if you play Jokic and he gets like 90. And he can certainly do that against the Suns. So I have a lot of interest in being over the field on Jokic. He hasn't been amazing against the Suns on the year, 49 fantasy points per game in 2 meetings. And he is almost 13K. So if you want to fade Jokic, I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. But I do think if he's going to be low owned, he's very, very appealing. Jamal Murray could be back here. Let's see his status. He is questionable. And then Michael Porter Jr. is also questionable. And we still don't have Peyton Watson and Russell Westbrook. And Aaron Gordon should be in. So if Murray is out, then we can look at like punts like Julian Strawther. Aaron Gordon will look good at 4.8. It would only help Jokic's usage and ceiling. And then if MPJ is out, all the guys that just said look even better. And then we can look at other punts too, like Zeke Naji, maybe even Jalen Pickett. I mean, and obviously Christian Brown would benefit quite a bit. Brown's already a good value. Price is coming up a little bit, but at 5.9K with no Russ and possibly no Murray or MPJ, he would look really, really good. So Denver is definitely a team to monitor. We could get a lot of solid plays from them tonight. So Suns played last night, went into overtime. Devin Booker went off, had 74 fantasy points with no KD. If KD's in, he's a solid play at 9K. If KD is out, Devin Booker would look really, really good again. Certainly possible the Suns are fatigued here after that game. But they're facing a Denver team that has been terrible defensively basically all year. So certainly a lot lately. So I like the Suns a good deal here. I think KD's fine. Like if KD's out, Devin's gonna be really owned, so we can certainly mess with that and not like play into the ownership if we don't want to. Gonna be a little bit hard to do that though. I do think ending the night with Devin versus Jokic is certainly appealing, and that is a fun way to close out tournaments. If KD and or Beal's also been missing. He missed last game. If either of those guys are out, Grayson Allen's going to look pretty darn good. The only problem is Grayson Allen's also questionable. So if Grayson Allen, yeah, he's questionable too with a knee issue. He was awesome yesterday. He was part of our core in our night slate, and he had 48 fantasy points. So he looked really good then, and he looks really good now. Only 4.9K. If he is also out, we can look at Tyus Jones feel a little bit better. We can look at Ryan Dunn at 3.6, and we can look at Royce O'Neal at 4.7. The problem with the Suns is not that they look good. They all look good depending on what the injury situations are. The problem is we might not get that news until way later. So I do not mind going into tournaments kind of projecting for that news to be the case. Same with Denver. I do not mind going in and kind of loading up on that game a little bit to the point where, I'm using a lot of these guys, just assuming guys like KD and Beal and Jamal Murray are going to be out, and just, hope it goes your way and adjust if you need to. There are a couple more games around that time. Celtics Knicks at 8:30, a half hour before it. So I think that news could fall by then if it doesn't way before that, and that could help you to give you other options, to pivot off of if you have to. All right, that is going to do for me. Hopefully this breakdown helps you out a little bit, points you in the right direction. If you need more advice or things change and this information and my favorite plays kind of grow stale before lock, I have a fix for you. You just go to our Discord, which you can catch linked at the bottom of this video, and we will help you out, give you updated core plays and advice, personalized advice. Really, if you have lineup questions, 1v1, 2v2, all that stuff, come and talk shop with us, and we will help you out. If any of this helps you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and come join us in Discord. Thanks for watching, and good luck.